Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got a really interesting stack of sources lined up.
Yeah, we're diving into a market in China that's absolutely booming, but maybe not one you hear about every day.
Exactly. It's all about toys, but definitely not aimed at kids.
Right. We're talking collection toys.
Specifically, we're looking at research and articles covering the explosion of the blind box phenomenon.
We're going to try and unpack what they are, who's buying them, why it's growing so incredibly fast.
And we'll dig into the stories behind the big players, Pop Mart and 52 TOYS. Some surprising journeys there.
For sure. The mission, I guess, is to really get to the heart of this trend, understand the dynamics.
Find those hidden nuggets of insight in this world of adult collectibles. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So first off, these collection toys in China. What are we actually talking about here?
Well, the term they use is shuzhuang, and it specifically means adult-oriented toys, purely for collecting.
Not for playing with.
Definitely not. It's a completely different mindset, a different game, really.
Got it. And the sources all point to the blind box as the engine driving this boom, right?
Absolutely. Manghe, that's the Chinese term. It is absolutely central to what's happening right now.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's totally new to this, how does the blind box concept actually work?
Okay. Imagine you have a series of figures, maybe 6 or 12 different designs, sometimes more.
Right.
You buy one, but it comes in a sealed box. You have absolutely no idea which specific figure is inside until you actually open it.
So it has that kind of similarity to Japanese gacha, the capsule toys.
Conceptually, yes, there's definitely overlap. But crucially, there are some key differences in how this specific market operates.
The surprise element is central. And I guess if you want a specific one or the whole set, you're going to get duplicates.
Exactly. You inevitably end up with doubles. And that's where the whole secondary market kicks in.
Ah, right. Places like Shenyou.
Yeah, Xianyu is basically this huge online flea market service. People are constantly on there trading or selling their duplicates.
So it becomes a social thing, too, almost. A marketplace.
Very much so. It turns collecting into this community activity as well as just buying.
What really struck me from the sources, though, and maybe this is a key difference from gacha, is how deliberate the rarity is.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just random chance.
They intentionally make the popular characters way harder to find.
Right.
To create that scarcity and drive up demand.
Precisely. Pop Mart, for example, they're even mentioned as publishing the rarity rates. You might be looking at like 1 in 720 odds for the really rare chase figure in a series.
Wow, 1 in 7 to 20. That's specific.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally different from traditional gacha, isn't it?
Totally. With gacha, often the items are, perceived as roughly equal in value. The fun is just the surprise of which one you get.
But here, the value is baked in as unequal from the start.
Exactly. The scarcity isn't just a side effect of randomness, it's a core part of the business model. It's designed to make certain figures incredibly desirable.
And that scarcity, I suppose, fuels that secondary market you mentioned. Adds excitement, maybe frustration too.
Definitely both. That tiny, tiny chance of pulling something super rare adds this huge tension and thrill when you open the box. It's not just a toy anymore, it's potentially a valuable collectible.
So when did this all really ignite? Was there a specific moment or product?
Yeah, the sources pinpoint 2018 as the explosion point. It wasn't just gradual growth, it really blew up then.
What happened in 2018?
That was the year Pop Mart launched their Molly series blind box, and it was just a massive, massive hit. It proved there was this huge untapped demand for this exact format aimed at adults.
And the scale of it all became undeniable when Pop Mart actually went public, didn't they?
Yes, listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in 2020, that was a huge signal. It wasn't just some niche toy company. It was a major cultural trend getting serious financial backing and validation.
Makes sense. And connecting this to the bigger economic picture, the sources say these aren't necessities, obviously.
Right, it's purely hobby spending, and consumption of these kinds of goods tends to track very closely with GDP per capita, as people have more disposable income.
They look for things to spend it on, leisure, personal enjoyment.
Exactly, this is purely discretionary spending.
And what's interesting is the comparison to other markets. The sources suggest China's market is still relatively young.
Yeah, compared to, say, the US or Japan, where collecting has longer, more established histories, the Chinese market is seen as just starting its climb, which suggests, huge growth potential still ahead.
And the numbers. Wow. The growth rates mentioned are staggering.
They really are.
Yeah.
Historical growth cited at 34.6% annually up to 2019, and even the forecasts after 2020 were still projecting around 30% growth.
That's incredible momentum for basically any industry.
It's a genuinely rapidly expanding space, no question.
So who is driving this? Who's the typical buyer here, according to the research?
The profile that emerges is pretty specific. It's heavily skewed towards young women,
Age range.
generally 18 to 29, and typically living in the bigger cities.
One source had this really vivid persona sketch,
Hmm.
like a 25-year-old single woman in Shanghai,
Mm-hmm.
earning maybe 8,000 yuan a month, but spending a significant chunk, like 2,000 yuan, just on hobbies.
That captures it perfectly, and their online life is completely woven into this hobby.
Right, active on all the major platforms.
Yeah.
Weibo,
Doing it,
Douyin.
which people might know as TikTok, outside
Right.
China, Bilibili, Xiangshu, Zifu. Yeah, all of them.
And their interest lineup, too. Trends, beauty, lifestyle.
Things reflecting personal taste, self-expression, it all fits together.
And this online presence directly shapes how they buy and interact with the hobby.
Absolutely. The sources talk about impulsive buying when new stuff drops in stores. They rely heavily on online reviews from peers.
And maybe most importantly, they're constantly sharing their own purchases, their unboxing experiences, their collections on social media.
Exactly. That sharing is a huge part of the fun, builds that community feel, and there seems to be this constant hunger for the new thing, the next release.
It really drives the purchasing cycle. And this feels like a real cultural shift too, doesn't it?
Hey, for sure. Traditionally, adult collecting in China might have focused on antiques, goan, or maybe fine art.
All right, much older traditions.
This younger generation is clearly gravitating towards these much more contemporary, accessible, almost pop culture forms of collecting.
Does this play out differently across generations? Are the motivations distinct?
Yeah, the sources make a pretty clear distinction there. You have the adults born in the 80s, now nearing their 40s.
Okay.
They often have more disposable income, and for them, a big driver seems to be nostalgia.
Nostalgia for what, specifically?
Japanese anime they grew up watching, shows like Saint Seiya, Dragon Ball, Ranma 12, Slam Dunk were huge. Collecting figures from those series is like reconnecting with their childhood.
Makes total sense. And what about the younger group, Z-Gen? Those born in the 90s, 95s.
For Z-Gen, the sources suggest a stronger preference for maybe indoor activities, and their interest in these toys often ties into decorating their personal space.
Ah, like curating their environment.
Exactly, their rooms, their shelves, their desks. Blind boxes fit right into that aesthetic. They sit alongside, prizes they won from UFO catchers or maybe their collection of limited edition sneakers.
So it's less about nostalgia and more about personal expression and decor.
It seems that way. It's about creating a space filled with things they like, things that reflect who they are.
It's really striking. These aren't just toys in the traditional sense at all. They're like elements of identity and home design.
Completely. It reframes the whole idea of what collecting means and how it fits into everyday life for this generation.
Okay, let's talk about the companies leading this. We mentioned Pop Mart and 52 TOS. Their stories are fascinating and quite different. Pop Mart first. How did they start?
Well, Pop Mart was founded way back in 2010 by Wang Ning, who was only 23 at the time.
23?
Yeah. And it wasn't initially a toy store at all. He started it as this kind of multi-category retail shop in Beijing. Honestly, it sounds like it sold a bit of everything, a random mix.
That sounds like a tough way to start. A general store competing with everyone.
It definitely was. The sources really paint a picture of major struggles early on. They apparently faced constant rejections from shopping malls who didn't see them as a desirable tenant.
And money problems.
Serious financial difficulties. There were even times, reportedly, when they couldn't pay salaries on time.
Ouch. I guess investors weren't exactly beating down the door either.
Not at all. Why would they? From an investor's viewpoint back then, it just looked like a regular shop, not something with that high-growth venture capital potential. The feeling was maybe it wouldn't lose much money, but it probably wouldn't make much either.
So how did they survive those early years?
They got a really critical investment in 2012, 2 million yuan from a firm called Chuangyi Gangcheng, which sort of means entrepreneur factory. And that initial funding was absolutely make or break. The sources suggest Pop Mart probably wouldn't exist today without it.
And even then, it wasn't smooth sailing.
No, apparently they kept losing money for another 3 years after that. They needed more rescue investments from that same firm just to stay afloat. It was a really long, hard climb.
So the blind box success wasn't immediate, even after funding. What was the actual spark? the turning point?
The big light bulb moment for Wang Ning seems to have come in 2016. He discovered these Japanese figures called Sony
Tell
Angels.
me, angels.
Yeah. He's apparently really struck by their design, but even more so by how they were sold using the blind box method. He saw the potential in that sales mechanic.
And that directly inspired their own killer product.
Exactly. Based on that idea, they developed their own original character, Molly. Launched her in blind box format in 2017, and Molly just exploded.
That was the hit.
Massive, almost overnight success. Pop Mart sales reportedly jumped 5.21 times in 2018, then another 2.13 times in 2019. That one character, sold via blind boxes, completely transformed the company's fortunes.
Incredible. One character, one method. So what's their approach to IP now? Is it just Molly?
Oh no, they've built a whole strategy around it. It's multi-layered. They have their own original IP, like Molly, about 12 types now.
Wow.
Then they have exclusive IP, where they have deals with creators. That's around 25 types. And then they also license big global IP, think Mickey Mouse, Hello Kitty. They have about 56 types of those.
But the original IP is still their core strength, you'd say.
Absolutely. Owning the original IP gives them total control. They can make anything, not just figures, but clothing, accessories, you name it. That's crucial for building a lasting brand and long-term growth.
And their scale now must be huge.
It is. Over 130 stores in 33 cities, plus more than 1,000 vending machines spread across 62 cities. And apparently they can get new products developed and into stores really quickly, like 8 to 10 months.
Wow, that's fast. Okay, so that's Pop Mart's journey from struggling shop to blind box behemoth. What about 52 TOIS? Totally different background, right?
Completely different. 52 TOIS comes much more from like traditional toy distribution and even gaming. It was co-founded in 2012 by Chen Wei and Wang Jin.
And their backgrounds.
Chen Wei was actually a former keyboardist in a band and a serious gamer. Wang Jin was already quite successful. He founded a hugely popular Chinese card game called Sung War Sha, Three Kingdoms Kill.
A keyboardist and a card game creator. Interesting mix. So how did Chen Wei get into toys?
Well, he first opened this sort of quirky game store in Beijing, and he started putting his personal toy collection on display, high-end figures, that kind of thing.
Just for show.
Initially, yeah. But customers kept asking if they were for sale. Apparently, one day, almost as a joke, he put this really high price tag on one of his own pieces, and someone actually bought it.
Okay.
That was the moment he realized, there's actually a market here. So he started sourcing and selling toys properly.
And that led him into distribution for bigger names.
Exactly. He became a distributor for foreign toy companies. Started with McFarlane Toys in 2002, and then, really importantly, Bandai from Japan in 2004.
Ah, Bandai. That must have been a game changer for them.
Oh, huge. Transformative. Their success distributing Bandai Saint Seiya figures was apparently enormous. Chen Wei tells this story about starting with an order for just 5 figures. 5. But demand just skyrocketed. Within 7 months, they were ordering entire shipping containers full of Saint Seiya figures every single month.
Wow. That sounds like hitting the jackpot as a distributor. But the sources say this success led to a kind of uncomfortable realization.
Yeah, this is where Chen Wei's story gets really insightful. He had this moment of clarity comparing his role to, like, a Starbucks franchisee versus Starbucks HQ.
How so?
He felt like and this is a great quote from the source, sewing a wedding dress for someone else's bride.
That's a powerful image.
Isn't it? He was doing all the heavy lifting, building the market, creating the brand awareness, nurturing the consumer base in China for Bandai's products. But ultimately, Bandai, the brand owner, could just decide to step in, take over the distribution themselves, and leave him completely out in the cold.
Right. All that work building their brand, not his own. That must have been the catalyst for wanting their own IP.
Exactly. He realized they had to control their own destiny. They needed their own original brands, their own products.
But their first attempts didn't go so well.
No, they really struggled. Retailers just wouldn't stock unknown original brands, so they were pretty much stuck selling through their own very limited retail channels.
What did they do for revenue then?
They had to keep manufacturing licensed IP products for other companies just to keep the lights on, but the profit margins on that were apparently razor thin because of all the licensing fees.
Sounds like things got pretty tough.
According to the sources, yeah, really tough. It hit rock bottom. Both co-founders apparently had to use their own homes as collateral just to get loans to keep the business alive.
Wow. using their houses.
Yeah, Chinwei talks about being in this basement warehouse with Huanjin until like 3:30 in the morning, just trying to figure out how they were going to survive. He calls it the absolute worst period of his life.
So how on earth did they pull out of that nosedive?
Well, Chenwei says the breakthrough wasn't deciding what to do, but deciding what not to do.
Interesting. What did they decide not to do?
They made this incredibly gutsy, almost counterintuitive decision. Stop manufacturing all licensed IP products, even though that was basically their only real income stream at the time.
Wow. Cut off their main revenue to focus solely on originals.
Exactly, a massive gamble. And apparently, a lot of their investors thought they were crazy, thought 52 TOIS was finished, and just pulled out.
It takes serious conviction, betting everything on their own stuff when licensed work was paying the bill.
It really does. But they believed in it. And crucially, one investor, Queming Venture Partners, stuck with them. They actually invested 100 million yuan in 2018, right as 52 TOIS was making this terrifying pivot.
Okay, so they had the funding and the focus. Did they have an original product ready that could capitalize on this?
They did. They'd actually launched a series called Beastbox back in 2016.
Beastbox. What are they?
They're these really cool, high-quality collectible figures. They start as a simple cube, and then they transform into intricate animals or dinosaurs.
Okay, sounds interesting. But they didn't sell well initially.
No, they kind of fell into this awkward middle ground. The designs, maybe the animal dinosaur motif, felt a bit too childish for some serious adult collectors. But the transformation mechanism was too complex for young kids to really play with easily.
So how did Beastbox eventually find its audience and take off?
This is where it gets fascinating. It sort of rode the wave of the whole blind box trend, even though Beastbox itself wasn't initially sold that way.
How did that work?
As Pop Mart's blind boxes exploded and made adult collectibles mainstream, a different segment of the market started looking for other things, particularly male collectors who maybe found Pop Mart's style a bit too cute. They started discovering Beastbox online. They appreciated the really detailed designs, the satisfying collectible transformation, the sheer quality of the manufacturing.
So word of mouth, essentially.
Yeah, word spread organically online about the quality and the cool factor.
Yeah.
And sales just started climbing. The blind box boom created this broader appetite for adult collectibles, and Beastbox, with its very different aesthetic, was perfectly positioned to capture a part of that new audience.
And I bet those investors who bailed came knocking again once things turned around.
You can probably guess the answer to that. Once the market proved their original IP strategy right, yeah, apparently many of those investors who left came back pretty quickly.
Amazing stories behind both companies. So looking at the market now, this incredibly fast-growing space, my sources pointed out something really curious.
What's that?
Despite this massive boom, the big Chinese tech giants, the Alibabas, the Tencents, the ones who usually jump into every hot new sector, they've mostly stayed out of directly competing here. Why?
That is a really interesting point, isn't it? In a country where tech seems to dominate almost every new trend, why haven't they just built their own blind box competitor?
Yeah, what's the thinking there?
The argument presented in the sources is that this is fundamentally a cultural industry.
Meaning not something you can just optimize with an algorithm like you're selling, I don't know, washing powder.
Exactly that. Success in this space isn't primarily about logistics or price wars or pure efficiency in the way it might be for basic commodities. It seems to require this really deep, almost intuitive understanding of the toy industry itself. You need years of experience, a feel for shifting trends, cultural nuances, market intuition that goes beyond what a purely data-driven approach can easily capture or predict.
So the tech guys know it's not their usual playground.
It seems the engineers and product managers within those big tech firms, many of whom are probably collectors themselves, they kind of understand that this isn't a space that's easily conquered just by throwing algorithms at it.
So maybe they might acquire a successful player like Pop Mart or 52 TOAS down the line.
That's certainly possible, yeah.
But trying to start from scratch and algorithmically engineer the next hit toy line, much harder because the product itself, the appeal, the design, the emotional connection, isn't easily broken down into quantifiable data points for optimization in their usual way.
That's the compelling argument. It's a field where understanding the heart, the culture of collecting, seems to matter more than just processing transaction data.
Okay. Now, the sources do mention some controversy around blind boxes, though, some criticism.
Yes, definitely. There are adults who are quite critical, viewing it as a bit manipulative. They use this Japanese phrase, "egi shippubai,"
which means.
something like a nasty or cutthroat way of doing business. The criticism is that the extreme rarity is designed to push people into buying way more than they intended, creating this intense pressure.
That viewpoint is definitely out there. But the sources offer a counter perspective too.
They do. They note that the young buyers themselves often seem less critical. And while it's true, resale prices can get crazy high. There's an example of a rare figure hitting nearly 40 times its original price on Shanyu.
40 times.
Yeah. But some collectors apparently see that high resale price as almost justifiable, given the incredibly low odds of actually pulling that rare item yourself.
How so? Explain that logic.
Well, think about it. If a figure genuinely has a 1 in 720 chance, right, and maybe each box costs 51, to guarantee getting that figure just by buying boxes, you'd theoretically have to spend 36,000 yuan.
Okay, yeah, that's a huge amount.
So in that context, paying, say, 2,350 yuan, which is 40 times the original 50 yuan box price on the secondary market, might actually seem like a pragmatic bargain to someone absolutely determined to get that specific rare piece.
That certainly puts the resale value in a different light, not just pure speculation.
It adds another dimension, yeah. And it's really important that the sources also stress that while speculation definitely happens, most people aren't buying purely for that.
They're not all trying to complete master sets or flip figures for profit.
No, most seem to buy in smaller amounts, maybe just 1 or 2 boxes here and there. The main motivation seems to be the simple fun of the surprise, the enjoyment of the collecting process itself.
So the journey, the thrill of opening, is often the point, not necessarily getting every single figure or making money.
Exactly. The satisfaction often comes from the process, finding figures you personally like, rather than purely completionism or investment.
Looking ahead, what are the future growth strategies for these companies? Where do they see the market heading?
Well, one clear strategy is trying to broaden the demographic, specifically reaching older collectors.
Right, you mentioned the 80s generation and nostalgia.
Yeah, while the core right now is firmly in the 20s to 40s range, companies like 52 TOYS say they do have a few fans even up to 70 years old, although that's rare.
So they expect their current base to age with them, but they also want to attract new, older buyers.
Both. They expect the demographic to rise naturally as their current fans get older, but they're also actively looking for ways to pull in middle-aged collectors, perhaps shifting their interest away from things like traditional antiques towards these modern collectibles.
And tapping into Chinese traditional culture and IP seems like a huge opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. They're already finding success with characters from classic Chinese literature, like The Romance of the Three Kingdoms or Water Margin.
The advantage there is built-in recognition, right?
Exactly. These characters are already incredibly popular, and you can leverage existing movies, TV shows, games for promotion. It makes marketing much easier.
But I imagine the most famous characters are highly contested, maybe expensive to license.
That's the challenge. So the key for companies like 52 TOYS seems to be finding those sort of hidden gem traditional characters or getting really creative in how they fuse traditional culture and historical artifacts with modern toy design, doing something unexpected.
And 52 TOYS is doing some really innovative things there based on the sources.
They really are. They're developing figures based on characters from Chinese mythology, like creatures that are half human, half beast. They're even creating figures based on historical artifacts, like the terracotta army warriors.
Wow, terracotta army figures. That's cool.
Yeah, and they even collaborated with the Shaanxi History Museum on a figure creation contest. That kind of initiative cleverly blends the interest many people have in antiques and history with modern toy creation and design.
And that probably brings in a different crowd, too.
Totally. It attracts a really diverse group of participants. You get traditional handmade crafters alongside people using 3D printers. It really broadens the potential fan base beyond just the usual toy collector circles.
That's a brilliant way to bridge those worlds: history, antiques, and modern pop culture collecting.
It's incredibly smart. It significantly expands who might be interested in their products.
Finally, we've kind of woven it throughout the conversation, but the sources consistently underline the huge influence Japan has had on this whole market.
Undeniably significant. Pop Mart's big breakthrough moment came directly from seeing the blind box concept used for those Japanese Sony Angel figures.
Right.
And 52 TOIS learned so much about the business distribution, understanding demand, brand building from their time as a major distributor for Bandai, especially with the success of Saint Seiya.
And Japanese anime and culture generally still have a massive footprint in China, don't they?
Very much so. Still incredibly influential.
Which leads to a pretty clear conclusion presented in the sources.
Yeah, that there's a really significant opportunity here for Japanese manufacturers, designers, and retailers to either enter this booming Chinese market or seriously expand their presence within it. The appetite is clearly there.
So, wrapping this up, our deep dive into Chinese collection toys really paints a picture of a market that's just a fascinating blend of things.
Yeah, it's driven by this young, very online consumer base, fueled partly by nostalgia, partly by this need for personal expression.
Built on some really clever strategic IP management, and definitely has a dash of that speculative excitement mixed into.
It's a real mix of culture and commerce, and powered by companies with these incredible, against-the-odds origin stories we discussed.
The speed and scale of the growth are just undeniable. It's clearly tapping into changing ideas about leisure, rising incomes.
And that thread of cultural influence, especially from Japan, is woven right through it all.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Thinking about this market still pretty young in China compared to collecting scenes elsewhere. It raises a bigger question for you, the listener, to think about.
Yeah.
As disposable income continues to rise and the ways people spend their free time keep evolving, how do these specific collecting habits, these blind boxes and figures, reflect broader shifts? Shifts in what people value, how they choose to express themselves, and maybe how they find joy and identity in a society that's changing so rapidly.
That's a great question. What does this intense focus on collecting these particular objects say about wider cultural values right now?
Exactly. Something to definitely mull over until our next deep dive.